Hello my friends and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're covering a build I'm calling the Magic Machine Gun, the ultimate spell-casting archer. This is a true jack-of-all-trades build, bringing everything an honor mode party might need, all wrapped up in a single character. We do incredible sustained ranged damage, and awesome burst damage as well when needed. We have excellent control options with powerful control spells at our fingertips and are one of the most mobile characters in the game, and secretly one of the best healers in the game as well. Combine that with our incredible access to utility skills and spells, and there's nothing that this character can't do. And if you get tired of trying a little bit of everything and just want enemies to go away, you can always just send a storm of arrows in their direction and end their miserable existence. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Iskadalin for the €12 donation, Michael Donovan for the £20, Init000 for the 5 francs, and Jediah Games and Roberto Fuentes Gomez for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really do appreciate the support. I'm very behind on saying thank you, but I really do appreciate it. Alright, let's get magical. I'm using Astarion as the example character for this build because I think that this is an incredibly lore-friendly way to build Astarion. This is a sort of spell-casting roguish build, which is exactly what he wants, and he's also the most powerful character to create this build for. His bonus to hit chance is incredibly useful given the number of attacks that we're making, and also given the number of attacks that we're making, his late game bonus to damage, if you take the associated story path, is incredible. This build makes more attacks than pretty much any other in the game, so it's going to use Astarion's unique companion bonuses even better than just about any other possible build. If you're building this as a custom character, taking a race that gets shield proficiency can be extremely useful in the early game just to make you a little bit more resilient. Something like half Wood Elf is the best choice because it gives you the extra mobility and shield proficiency, and this character will be moving many times per turn, so we're going to use that extra mobility even better than every other character, which can also already use it very well. Githyanki's medium armor proficiency isn't as powerful as shield proficiency, but still very useful, so also a great choice, and can make you even better at being a skill character with the astral proficiency that they get. And of course, Halfling's ability to reroll ones is excellent on this character. We're going to be rolling a ton of dice, so rerolling ones is a massive increase to our damage output throughout the course of a long honor mode run. Although this build will be multi-classing extensively, we want access to our most powerful abilities as soon as possible, so we're going to start with a level of Bard. Now, it's worth noting that you can reorder the levels in this build quite significantly. I'm going to show you the level order that keeps you the strongest at every point during the game, so you can play this character from level 1 to 12 without any weak points or points where you're not contributing to the team. But if you want to emphasize different abilities at different levels, you can reorder these levels. You'll always want to begin as a Bard, though. For our cantrip selection as a bard, we're going to go ahead and take Minor Illusion. That will allow us to group enemies together, which is going to be very useful for some of our abilities, or pull them apart so we can kill them without their allies helping. And we're going to pick up Friends. This character is going to make a great party face, so having Friends will just give you advantage. Even on honor mode, you can use Friends and then leave the area and not suffer the downsides of it. So it's an extremely useful ability for any character that is operating as your party face. For our spell selection here, we're going to go ahead and take Healing Word, as well as picking up Dissonant Whispers as our best combat spell. Healing Word, of course, is a bonus action spell, which is really useful for this build for building up Bladesong charges, which we are the best character in the game at building quickly. And Dissonant Whispers is our best combat spell in the early game. After those two spells, you have a bunch of different options. This character will be able to spec into various different roles for your party, so your spell selection is going to be somewhat dependent on what other characters you have in your party as to which are the most important. Longstrider should be somewhere in your party. Obviously, you can have a campcaster do this, but this character is so focused on mobility that grabbing Longstrider is good. We can later learn it from a scroll as a wizard, but having it in the early game is going to still be excellent, so picking it up as a bard spell known is definitely not a bad idea. And of course, you also have control spells like Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which can be very, very useful later on, especially because this is an enchantment spell, and as a spellcasting attacker, we of course have the potential to use Arcane Acuity if you want to take the character in that direction. A particular mention as well for this character for Featherfall, which is actually a really useful spell for us. We're going to be jumping a lot, and sometimes you want to jump down from height on this character, and otherwise would take damage. Precasting Featherfall before combat starts in areas with significant height differences is actually a pretty useful thing to do. It's a ritual spell, so it doesn't need a spell slot, so that's another great option as well. You'll probably want to just use scrolls or potions for it, but it is worth mentioning that this spell, normally not a high pick, is better for this character than for others. For our ability score selection, this character doesn't have to use an attribute item, but it will make the character play much more smoothly if you do use one attribute item. We can use pretty much any that will allow us to increase our dexterity. Either the Gloves of Dexterity, the Graceful Cloth, Ethel's Hair, or the Mirror all work for this character. For this build, I'm going to assume that you're using the Gloves of Dexterity, because this will allow us to get an extra feat, which is very nice for the build, but any of those attribute items can work. In the early game, therefore, your ability score selection is going to look like 16 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 12 Wisdom, and 16 Charisma. And then later on, once we get the Gloves of Dexterity, we're going to respec to remove all of our Dexterity, because we'll just replace this number with an 18 by wearing the gloves, and then add 16 Intelligence in its place. By this point, we'll have gotten levels in Wizard, or be close to getting levels in Wizard, and so we will now want this high Intelligence to make our Wizard spellcasting better. This character can actually interchangeably use Bard and Wizard spells, one of the cool things about it, so we're going to have the spellcasting of both classes available to us at a very high power level. For your skill selection, this character brings everything that a party needs, pretty much. We get to be the party face as well as the lockpicker, so making sure that we have sleight of hand as well as persuasion are the two most important skills to pick. Persuasion's the most important of the dialogue skills, being the one that comes up most often and also what governs prices at merchants, so you want to make sure you have that one. And then you can pick other dialogue skills based on which ones you want to use for role-playing reasons, or which checks you particularly think you want to pass. Taking a point in stealth is also very useful. This character can, of course, use stealth excellently as a ranged archer character with rogue levels, so being able to abuse stealth checks or just get away from enemies by hiding from them is very useful, so you might consider a skill selection that looks something like this, though you can customize this outside of sleight of hand and persuasion. There's none that you absolutely have to take, but this is the most powerful looking selection overall, and as Astarion, you also get the nice bonus of getting perception from being a high elf as well. Finally, of course, we're a bard, so you need to make sure you pick the right starting instrument or you're going to completely ruin your run, and then we're done with everything at level 1, so let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we're taking our second level of Bard, gaining access to Song of Rest, which of course increases our party utility significantly, and we also get another spell. You can pick up pretty much any spell at this point. Thunder Wave is another good one for pushing enemies away from you. Of course, you're an archer build, so having the ability to create some space is useful. Or you can take a utility spell like Disguise Self or Speak with Animals to give you a little more dialogue optionality as well. Or pick up Featherfall just because it's kind of cool that there's a character that actually wants to use Featherfall pretty consistently, and it's neat that we get to play around with a spell that you don't normally see. At character level 3, we're going to take our third level of Bard, and we now get to choose our subclass. Of course, this is an archer-based Bard, so the subclass that we're going to take is the College of Swords. This gets us a bunch of incredible bonuses for this character. Firstly, of course, we get Slashing Flourish, which is going to allow us to double our attacks, which is incredible for this character. Not only does that double our damage output, it will also allow us to build 2 healing charges per use of Slashing Flourish with our Bladesong Climax ability, which can give you incredible burst healing and let you full heal your entire party later on in the game when we get access to that ability. So it not only is this an incredible ability in and of itself, it's especially synergistic with the Bladesong Wizard abilities that we're going to be using. We also get a fighting style, letting us take 2-weapon fighting. Since we're going to be using a pair of hand crossbows, 2-weapon fighting will allow us to add our full damage modifier, full ability modifier to damage with our offhand attack, and that's going to add up to +8 or +12 even damage per turn, which is a not insignificant boost to our damage output, especially as we get later in levels and start making even more attacks. We also, of course, get level 2 spells, and there's a lot of great level 2 spell options, but almost every character that has access to it is going to want Cloud of Daggers. It's just incredible and reliable, especially because this character has great single target damage through our archery, so Cloud of Daggers gives us a good way to deal with multiple enemies. We can also replace one of our lower level spells that we're using less often at this point. Honestly, the Featherfall thing, you don't actually want to take Featherfall most of the time, so I would just replace it here, and then you can learn it from a wizard scroll later on, and pick up something like Hold Person, which of course, combined with your archery attacks, if you're within 10 feet of the enemy, gives you automatic critical hits, which vastly increases your damage output. We also get expertise in 2 skills, which lets us get sleight of hand expertise and persuasion expertise, making us even better at these skill checks. Remember that we'll have higher dexterity, so you'll have a higher sleight of hand than it shows on this character sheet. We just have 8 listed here because we're going to be using the Gloves of Dexterity. So this character brings all of the utility skills that your party needs, all again in a single character, making it just an incredible main character to build a party around. At level 4, this is a point where you could, if you wanted to get your wizard abilities earlier, take a level of wizard. I'm going to recommend continuing to level bard so we get our higher level bard abilities as quickly as possible, but this is a point where you could dip in 1 level of wizard to gain more spell access, which would be pretty powerful as well, so if you're looking to do that earlier, now's the time to do it. As a bard, though, we get an additional cantrip at this level, and we're going to go ahead and take Mage Hand. Mage Hand is a really nice utility cantrip for this character to have. Some ways that we can power up the character include doing cold and lightning damage, which Mage Hand can throw a bottle of water at enemies in order to get them wet, and then we double that damage. So it's a very powerful tool in that sense. It can also throw healing potions and stuff at our allies, or even grenades if you create a pile of grenades for it to throw as well. Though be careful, because enemies will sometimes blow those up. For our spell selection at this level, we are going to go ahead and pick up either a utility spell like Enhance Ability or Invisibility if you feel like you're going to get good value out of those, or a combat spell like Crown of Madness or Heat Metal. I really like having Heat Metal for the early game because there's a lot of enemies you want to disarm, so I'm going to recommend picking that up, but again, you have a lot of flexibility with your spell selection depending on what other party members you have. For our feat selection, as an archer character, we are going to take Sharpshooter like every archer before us. I get some questions about this sometimes because people are justifiably nervous about the -5 penalty to your attack rolls with Sharpshooter, but we're firing 2 hand crossbows, which means that we're doubling the damage output that Sharpshooter provides. We're getting twice the bonus. You can always toggle it off if you're really nervous about missing an attack or if an enemy is low health. And remember that we're going to spend a lot of our time hiding, so we'll have advantage on attacks. You may have an ally with Bless to increase your hit chance bonus. Sharpshooter increases your damage so much. You always want to get this as soon as possible. Even if your hit chance is low, it's usually an increase to your average damage, so in longer fights, just leave Sharpshooter on all the time. And if an enemy is low and you can burst them down without it, just turn it off. So Sharpshooter, always an incredible pick for an archer. Definitely get it at level 4. At character level 5, we get access to Font of Inspiration, allowing us to use our Sword Bard abilities many more times because they now come back on a short rest cooldown instead of a long rest. Remember also that Sword Bard gets double value from Sharpshooter whenever you use Slashing Flourish, so yet another reason that that feat is so good for this character and why you should take it at level 4. We also get 3rd level spells, a massive power spike giving us access to some of the strongest spells in the entire game. We're always going to be taking Hypnotic Pattern, which gives us an encounter-winning control spell, letting us lock down huge groups of enemies. It also has special synergy with this character if you're doing Band of the Mystic Scoundrel stuff, because it's an illusion spell, so you can cast it as a bonus action. And of course, this character can make great use of the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, one of the most powerful strategies in the game, so having the option to use that is always going to improve the power of your character. We're also going to replace one of our lower level spells. In this case, you probably won't be concentrating on Cloud of Daggers as much at this point, because if you need an AoE concentration spell, Hypnotic Pattern is usually going to be better. So we're going to take Glyph of Warding for a non-concentration combat option, but you should also have a good idea of which of these spells you're casting and which you aren't, and can adjust your spell list accordingly, especially because soon we're going to get even more spell versatility when we take Wizard levels at level 7. At character level 6, we're taking our 6th level of Sword Bard, because this is where we get extra attacks, so now we can make even more attacks per turn. Between our 2 main hand attacks and our offhand attack, because we're using 2 hand crossbows, if we spend 2 slashing flourishes, that's 5 attacks in a round, an absurd number of attacks. That's 50 bonus sharpshooter damage, plus all of the damage of our actual attacks. So that can easily be 100 damage that we're outputting starting at level 6 in 1 round of burst damage, and of course we back that up with the incredible spell casting that this character has access to. For our spell selection at this level, there's lots of different spells that you can pick up that are all pretty useful. I like having Plant Growth on archers because it's not concentration, it quarters enemy movement speed, so it completely shuts down melee enemies and lets you pick them off basically at your leisure. It also especially combines well if you have another character in the party that has Hunger of Hadar or other lockdown spells, or other AoE damage spells, so you can keep enemies in Plant Growth and then they'll constantly be taking Hunger of Hadar damage, so an amazing combination if you have a Warlock in the party as well. Now, up until this point, of course, this has looked like a fairly standard Sword Bard archer, but now is when the spice comes in. We're going to, instead of taking our 7th level of Bard, take a level of Wizard. As a 7th level of caster, right away this gives us access to the entirety of the Wizard spell list up until level 4, at least the spells that are available through scrolls. And because we have 16 intelligence as well as 16 charisma, because we now have the gloves of dexterity at this point, we don't have to decide whether we're using offensive spells from our bard spell list or our wizard spell list. We can take the full benefit of both spellcasting classes, prepare a ton of spells, and get access to great offensive spell utility from both of these classes. Wizard also gives us a lot of great utility spells. I'll go into more detail about which spells we should look for scrolls of in the items section to make sure that you scribe the right scrolls, but one, of course, that is worth noting and that you definitely want is Haste. This is a build that makes lots of attacks. Haste gives you an extra attack and also increases your mobility and armor class, incredibly useful for an archer, so that will often be what you're concentrating on. Do keep in mind that if you cast another concentration spell while you're hasting yourself, you're going to stun yourself, so you obviously have to be aware of that if you want to swap to a control concentration. But Haste is still just an incredibly powerful effect for this character. Getting to cast it on yourself is always going to be great. For our cantrip selection as a wizard, we're going to take cantrips that give us some utility. Obviously, for combat cantrips, we would typically rather just fire an arrow. It does more damage. But cantrips like Ray of Frost or Firebolt will allow us to freeze puddles or set fires, which has a ton of utility in Baldur's Gate just in general. Cantrips like Bone Chill can prevent enemy healing. Extremely useful in Act 2. By the way, Firebolt's not showing up on this list because Astarion has it as a racial cantrip, so that's why it's not showing up here. Bone Chill can prevent healing, and give undead disadvantage, which is extremely useful in Act 2. So things like Firebolt, Ray of Frost, or Bone Chill give us a lot of extra utility, but of course the most powerful utility is annoying people in the YouTube comments, so we're going to go ahead and take True Strike as well. For our spell selection, I think I actually misspoke earlier and said that you could learn Longstrider from a scroll. That's not true. There are no scrolls of Longstrider or Enhanced Leap, both of which are extremely powerful to have. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you learn Enhanced Leap and Longstrider. This character will be doing a bunch of jumping, and the distance that you can jump for your Bladesong Climax, because that is a jump, is affected by Enhanced Leap. So having this spell and casting it as a ritual before combat starts, alongside possibly Featherfall to make sure you're not taking falling damage, makes your Bladesong Climax ability significantly easier to use. Enhanced Leap is super powerful. In addition to that, we also get the awesome defensive utility of shield. You can use mage armor, especially if you're in the graceful cloth instead of using the gloves of dexterity. Then mage armor will obviously increase your armor class, so that gives you a lot of utility. Magic missile gives you a way to hit enemies that doesn't involve rolling a hit die at all, so you will be able to kill enemies that are at low health 100% reliably. And spells like Fog Cloud can be used to give enemies a no-save blind and then follow up with advantaged attacks against them. There's a lot of great utility from level 1, but the most important ones to learn are, of course, Shield, which is not available from a scroll and the best defensive reaction in the game, basically mandatory for every character that can have it, and Longstrider and Enhanced Sleep, because again, not available from scrolls. Things like Grease and Chromatic Orb give you great area of effect abilities as well to control enemies, so I would choose something like this from your level 1 spell selection. And at character level 8, we're going to take our second level of Wizard, and we're going to take Bladesinging Wizard. Now you might be wondering, why? You've been saying it's an archery build, why are you taking the Sword Wizard? Sword Wizard, just like Sword Bard, doesn't actually require you to use a sword. The requirements for Bladesong are that you have to have a sword in your main hand, you can't be using medium or heavy armor, or shields, and that's it. So we would want to have a sword equipped in our main hand anyways, even if we're not attacking with it. And Bladesong charges are built just by attacking with a weapon. It doesn't have to be a sword that you attack with. That means that as long as we're holding a sword at all, we can activate Bladesong, gaining the benefits of bonus armor class, movement speed, constitution saving throw bonuses, as well as becoming harder to shove because we have advantage in acrobatics, and getting access to Bladesong charges, which we can build up to a massive Bladesong climax. Get your jokes out in the comments below. We can shoot so many times per round that this character can build up an absurd number of Bladesong healing charges, giving you access to a bonus action full heal for your entire party pretty much every round of combat after the first. So if enemies get to take a turn and do a bunch of damage, you can almost always heal up your entire party for free. We also have a ton of spellcasting abilities. We're going to be casting a lot of spells. We'll be hasted, so we may be casting multiple spells per turn, allowing us to build up Bladesong damage charges very, very quickly as well. Just a bonus action to activate Bladesong Climax, and this will let us do a full heal for our party and a huge amount of burst damage to enemies, so we can take advantage of the fact that this doesn't require us to actually attack with a sword in order to build up these charges wildly faster than any other character in the game, and make use of them even better. We also get to pick 2 new spells. Of course, this will depend on what you've found scrolls for, so go ahead and just pick up whatever you are missing at this point. And a Bladesinger's weapon. This just gives you a non-magical version of this weapon in your inventory, which at this point you should be just lousy with these, so pick whichever one is your favorite. No other meaningful decisions at this level. We're just here for the Bladesong climaxes. Now at this level, there's actually a lot of different ways that we could continue leveling the character. More levels of Bard would be excellent, levels of Fighter or Ranger would be great. There's definitely tons of different variations of this build that you can do, but I'm thinking that what's better than doing all of these things? Doing all of these things even more. So what we're going to do here is take levels of Rogue so that we can get Thief Rogue for extra bonus attacks and become even better at making offhand attacks, using Bladesong climaxes, casting multiple spells to build Bladesong charges super quickly, and using the incredible item combinations like the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel stuff that we have access to, while becoming even more mobile and even harder for enemies to deal with. So we're going to take a level of Rogue here, getting Sneak Attack, which of course increases our damage even further, and also Expertise into more skills. Which skills you take Expertise in here mostly doesn't matter, but grabbing Stealth Expertise will allow you to be even better at hiding, and in combination with Greater Invisibility, which you can get because you're a wizard, so you have level 4 spell access, you can use Greater Invisibility shenanigans to win fights before enemies even know that you're there as well. At level 10, we're taking our second rogue level, which of course gives us cunning, action, hide, dash, and disengage. These abilities make us absurdly mobile on the battlefield, letting us move with ease from fight to fight, leave fights that aren't going well, or just stay out of range of enemies so that we can continuously blast them with our vast arsenal of incredibly powerful attacks. And then at character level 11, we grab our third level of Rogue, allowing us to take Thief Rogue for an additional bonus action. Not only does this let us use all of our awesome abilities even more, we have so many great bonus actions. Bladesong Climax, Healing Word, dashing and hiding, or simply just attacking with our offhand hand crossbow. This gives us yet another attack with our offhand for even more attacks in a turn. At this point in the game, we have now 2 main hand attacks, each of which can be doubled using Slashing Flourish for 4 main hand attacks. And if we're hasted, we can make that 6 main hand attacks with yet another Slashing Flourish, and then 2 offhand attacks as well for a total of 8 attacks. And that's before you take into account things like Terrazul or Elixirs of Bloodlust. That's just from what this character provides on its own, a ridiculous number of attacks every single turn. In addition, of course, we get all of the awesome utility that having an extra bonus action gives us, making us just so much better at moving around the battlefield and making this character incredibly fun and very clean and easy to play. And finally, at character level 12, we're going to take our 4th rogue level to get another feat. Now, there's actually a lot of different feats that we could take here that are all pretty reasonable. We could take an ability improvement, which, of course, if you are using the Graceful Cloth or Ethel's Hair in order to boost your dexterity to the maximum, you're going to take an ability score improvement here. This will, of course, require slightly lower stats elsewhere, so you'll take fewer offensive spells and more utility spells if you're not using the Gloves of Dexterity. But you can take an ASI to boost your dexterity to maximum, or you can take an ASI for this build in order to increase your intelligence or charisma, whichever one you're using more offensive spells from. That's a totally reasonable option. We can also just take Alert. This character with the Gloves of Dexterity has +4 initiative by default. Alert takes us to +9, guaranteeing that we're going first in every combat. We can take Mobile to give us even more movement around the battlefield. Alert is the most powerful option for Honor Mode, so that's what I'm going to recommend here, just making certain that we go before enemies, especially in the late game, especially because of the overwhelming damage this character can do when we want to do a Nova turn in the late game. This is just the best option, but all of those make great options as well. And if you are not using the gloves and instead are using the Graceful Cloth or Ethel's Hair or the Mirror to boost your dexterity to maximum, then you're going to want to take an ASI to boost your dex. All right. That is the magic machine gun, but of course we can improve the character even further using items, which it is great at using, some of the best items in the game, so let's talk about those. 4 items for this character. The thing about items is that there are so many amazing items that we can use, and we use them so well because we're a sword bard build, so that's just the nature of this type of character, that the real decision point is just how broken we want the character to be, more than which items are good for the character. I'll start with the early game. So early on, you're going to want to use items like the Marksmanship Hat that give you additional bonuses to hit chance. That's going to be very helpful for making sure that you're actually landing your attacks in the early game. The Gloves of Archery increase your damage output and also give you access to longbows if you don't have those from your race, which before you get a pair of good hand crossbows, which can sometimes take a little while in the early game, may be useful in order to make sure that you have a good weapon that you can use in the early game. Later on, things get much more powerful. So, of course, obviously, we're using a pair of hand crossbows, so we need to use 2 good hand crossbows. The best 2 in the game are the Hellfire hand crossbow and the Nair Misser, and these 2 are usually going to be the ones that you're going to use. However, there is an exception to this, because although these are the 2 most powerful hand crossbows in the game, the Nair Misser doing force damage, which is usually an advantage, is a disadvantage in one specific situation. If you're using the best armor for this character in the game, the Ballast armor. This character is restricted to light armor at most. You can either use no armor or light armor only, because you're a Bladesong Wizard, you want to be able to activate your Bladesong Climax. So Ballast armor as a light armor doubles piercing damage that you're doing to enemies and gives you +2 to initiative. It's the best armor in the game for this character. The requirement to be within 10 feet is very easy to meet because you're so mobile on this character with incredible move speed and multiple dashes per turn. But because the Nair Misser does force damage and you double piercing damage, you're going to want to use a hand crossbow +2 instead in order to make sure that both of your weapons are doing piercing damage with the ballast armor. So Hellfire and the Nair Misser up until you get the ballast armor, then swap the Nair Misser for a +2 hand crossbow. Of course, we've built this character in this example around using the Gloves of Dexterity, so we're going to want to use those. If you're not, then you're going to want to use a different stat item, like the Graceful Cloth, to hit 20 Dexterity. And if you're using the Gloves of Dexterity, that means you won't be able to use other gloves. If you're using the Graceful Cloth, any gloves that do damage, like the Helldusk gloves, are going to be your best choice for your glove slot. Potions of Speed are very useful. You can concentrate on haste if you have that as a spell known, but of course being able to do that without concentration is incredibly helpful for this character, and we have extra bonus actions to drink our potions, so we can use them very easily. And our helmet slot, there are an incredible number of possible options for the best helmet for this character. The Helmet of Arcane Acuity is, of course, amazing for any character like this. We're making a ton of weapon attacks every turn. We're going to stack Arcane Acuity to maximum, which will then increase the attack rolls and DC for our spells very, very easily. We can combine that with the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel to bonus action cast illusion or enchantment spells, so you can max out Arcane Acuity, and then bonus action cast Hold Person with one of our 2 bonus actions. For save DCs that are high enough that enemies can't possibly succeed on them. That's why it doesn't matter that our casting stats are a little bit on the lower end, because you can easily stack Arcane Acuity to maximum. However, if, like me, you are bored of using Arcane Acuity on every build, there's a bunch of other helmets that are really cool for this character. Of course, anything that increases your spell save DC, like the Fistbreaker helmet, is always going to be good for this character. The Diadem of Arcane Synergy can give you your spellcasting modifier, which will be intelligence, to your weapon attacks. And since you're attacking up to 8 to 10 times every turn, that's up to +30 damage, without even any boosts to your intelligence, per turn. And you can inflict conditions with every one of your attacks. The Hellfire Hand Crossbow inflicts burning if you attack a creature while hiding, or you can use an Illithid power in order to inflict a condition on every attack. Because you can use use ability drain from Illithid powers in order to trigger the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. My favorite helmet for this character, though, is the Helmet of Grit. We use bonus actions even better than every other character in the game, and so these are an amazing resource for us. Having a third bonus action lets this character just go absolutely bananas, just dashing around the battlefield, casting healing words and bonus action spells all the time. You can still use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel even without the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. You usually see these items glued together, but that's not mandatory. And so having multiple bonus action spell casts, multiple bonus action attacks is really, really fun. So the Helmet of Acuity, probably the strongest. Helmet of Grit is my personal favorite. This character can also benefit tremendously from the Amulet of Greater Health. We only naturally get 14 Constitution. This can let you boost your Constitution up to 23, giving you a ton more hit points, and then also you won't lose concentration on important concentration spells like Haste, which is very, very valuable. And it lets you reallocate these points into something else. You can put them in Strength for even more jump distance, or raise your Intelligence to 17, use Ethel's Hair to boost that further to get higher casting stats. If you want to invest all of the stat boosting items into this character, it can use all of them very, very well. Of course, as a Bladesinger Wizard, we need to have a sword equipped in our main hand, or some form of bladed weapon. The only requirement is that we have one bladed weapon in our main hand, and no shield in our offhand, so we can have 2 weapons, or we can just use 1 weapon. There's a bunch of great options here. Falar Louv is good for this character. It increases your damage output enormously with the Shriek ability, or you can use Sing in order to make sure that you land your shots more reliably. So this character can use Falar very, very well. We don't have 2-weapon fighting, or dual wielder, so we won't get an offhand weapon with Falar, but that's fine because it's super powerful and we're attacking so many times that Shriek will go off a lot. Similarly, the Duelist Prerogative is great as just a main hand weapon that we can use. An extra reaction gives us a ton of optionality. We can use shield spells. So this character can benefit from having extra reactions, and you can actually make attacks with the Duelist Prerogative as well. And it gives you bonus to your critical hit chance, which of course is very valuable for this character. So that's another option. It's not, I think, the most powerful, but it's kind of cool that this character can use this weapon pretty well. The best setup probably, though, is to use two weapons to use the passive benefits of powerful weapons that give you high bonuses to your archery. Things like the Knife of the Undermountain King, which reduces the number you need to roll to critical hit, can increase your damage output enormously. And of course, Rhapsody gives you a bonus to your attack rolls, damage, and spell save DC, all of which are amazing. A +3 bonus on all of those. Remember, that's like 30 more damage every turn. That is going to be a tremendous amount of reliability to your attacks, which without the archery fighting style, Sharpshooter can cause you to miss attacks sometimes. So Rhapsody definitely helps you boost the effectiveness of your shooting, and the spell save DC will allow you to land your spells much more reliably. We also get access to another really cool combo, the Snowburst Ring and the Drakethroat Glaive. If you use this to enchant your crossbow with cold damage, then it will summon a pool of ice underneath every enemy that you attack, and you attack a lot, so you can make a lot of ice surfaces that enemies then have to contend with. And the save DC on the Snowburst Ring is your actual spellcasting DC, which will be very high if you're boosting it with things like Rhapsody. So the Snowburst Ring is super powerful. Another great option for a ring is the Strange Conduit Ring, just for even more damage. Of course, you're going to be concentrating on a spell all the time. This gives you bonus damage on every single weapon attack, so is super powerful as well. Finally, you're going to want a good selection of scrolls. Things like Haste are the most important, but utility scrolls like Invisibility, Misty Step, which you don't naturally get access to but can learn from a scroll. Wall of Fire can win some encounters on its own. Control spells are very valuable. Things like Fear are extremely useful to this character as well, and ways to push enemies away like Thunder Wave or Gust of Wind can be very helpful for you also. So there's a lot of different scrolls that you could use. Of course, you're a wizard, so you're going to play Pokemon and just collect all the scrolls. The one thing that you don't get is Counterspell, because there's no scroll of Counterspell in the game. So you'll want another party member that has access to Counterspell to go with this one. But other than that, you can cover pretty much all the utility spells for your party. And of course, you can lock down enemies very powerfully with Hold Person and other similar effects. One other thing to mention as well is that while you only have 2 Bladesong power charges per long rest, so you might think that that is not enough, you don't need to use this every combat. It's a powerful ability, giving you a bonus to your armor class, movement speed, con saves, and so on, but absolutely not required. If you aren't using Bladesong in a given combat, then oh no, you'll have to make do with being an amazing spellcaster and having 10 incredibly damaging attacks in the opening rounds of combat. Somehow I think you'll muddle through. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the magic machine gun, and I hope that you enjoy dancing all over the battlefield and obliterating your enemies in a rain of arrows, and, of course, healing your allies or blowing up your enemies in a massive climactic burst. As always, of course, if you have enjoyed the videos, feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I really appreciate you taking time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.